Welcome back. We're discussing the presidential elections being held in Iran on Friday and examining the consequences of any potential outcome. Joining me are Human Majd, author of The Ayatollah Begs to Differ, The Paradox of Modern Iran. Professor Nayere Tauhidi, who is the chair of the Gender and Women's Studies Department at California State University, and Dr. Riz Khan, an expert on religion and politics, whose latest book is How to Win a Cosmic War, God, Globalization, and the End of the War on Terror. Now, before we resume our discussion, here's the results of the instant poll we conducted over the break. It's not scientific, but we asked whether Iran's relationships with the West will improve, worsen, or not change at all after tomorrow's election. Well, 54% of you who took part said they will get better, while 8% said those relations will worsen, and 38% believe that nothing will really change. As we get back to questions, we had a comment from Jim Miller in Georgia, one of our viewers who sent in this by email from the USA, saying the deciding factor in this election will be the economy and a move to a more moderate/democratic style of government. I don't know that this will happen, but as I observed, the push for such a change is very strong. And Human, if I could put that to you, obviously the economy is something that Reza Aslan was talking about, but Ghada in Canada, who sent a live station comment to us, says a victory by Mousavi would be welcomed by the US because they consider him to be more moderate. But then again, if the US approached Mr. Ahmadinejad with the proper attitude, I think he would be open to having a dialogue with them. Now, I know you were translating for him and had some FaceTime with him. What do you think? Would his attitude change with the right attitude from the US?
Well, I think with the right attitude from the U.S., depending on what you define as the right attitude, any of Iran's leaders' attitudes would change. I think Mr. Ahmadinejad absolutely would like to see relations with the U.S. on his terms, or at least on the terms that he thinks are beneficial to Iran. I think that his belligerent stance has made it very difficult for Iran and the United States to have serious dialogue. His questioning of the Holocaust, his discussions of Israel disappearing off the map, or however you want to translate his statements, these aren't very helpful when it comes to negotiations between Iran and the United States. And ultimately, the presidency, even though the supreme leader has final say on these matters, the presidency will be the face of Iran in terms of negotiations. And so, yeah, but I do think he does want relations with the U.S. and would like to be able to have that feather in his cap, as it were, in terms of being the person who was able to, in his mind, bring the United States begging at Iran's doorstep. Now, Mr. Mousavi is very different in that regard. He believes in a very different approach, and I think it would be much easier for the United States to have a dialogue with the Mousavi administration than with an Ahmadinejad administration. And of course, Mousavi is supported by former President Khatami and former President Rafsanjani, both of whom have had negotiations with the United States on an unofficial level anyway, and are big advocates of direct negotiations and compromise, even, if that's the right word here, with the United States.
Let me put this to Professor Tauhidi. This is an email that came in from Amina Wasif in Lahore in Pakistan, who wrote in saying, Iran is not stubborn, nor are Iranians irrational. Most Iranians desperately want a break from this despotic regime and are extremely secular in outlook. Just because Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is Iranian does not mean that all Iranians are like him too. What's interesting in this election is that there's obviously the presence of Mr. Mousavi's wife out on the campaign poll, and I wonder to what degree that campaigning by Zahra Ranevad has made a difference in the way women have approached this election and perhaps might affect the outcome, Professor.
Yes, actually, Dr. Zahra Rahnavard, Mr. Mousavi's wife, is a big asset in this election that favors him and his camp. So that shows by itself, and I agree with the content of that email, that in addition to the economy, which is definitely the deciding factor, and also foreign policy, the confrontational approach of Ahmadinejad has really isolated Iran internationally and has brought Iran to the danger of military attack by Israel and by the United States and the West in general. So people are mobilized not only on around the economic issues and the foreign policy issues, but also around some social issues like human rights, freedom of speech, and the extent of crackdown on the youth and on women during Ahmadinejad's government have really made them fed up, and they want to get rid of Ahmadinejad, even though many people found it hard to bring themselves to vote because of their, skepticism about the whole regime, but they are so fed up with Ahmadinejad that they feel compelled to vote. And if you see the youth, the slogans, for example, down with Taliban, be it in Kabul or Tehran, or they call Ahmadinejad liar, liar. So they are really tired of hearing lies and this adventurous foreign policy and this crackdown on personal freedoms, on individual freedoms, on the more restriction on the hijab, the compulsory, dress code and all that. So these are social issues that have mobilized women and the youth in particular.
I want to pick up on what you're saying there to Dr. Reza Aslan. This couple of questions or couple of comments that came from our internet chat room. MJ Ismail in the UK says, how much power does the president have in relation to foreign policy? And Mark Jackson in Vancouver sends in this question, what is the actual power the president has in Iran? And he says, the biggest issue for me as an Iranian is the fundamental disconnect between the government of Iran and its people, especially the youth.
Well, the office of president, of course, is not as powerful as one would expect from that title. The president doesn't decide foreign policy by any means. In fact, the president's national security clearance does not even allow him to look at the nuclear portfolio, let alone make any decisions about it. But that does not mean that the president is a powerless figure. I mean, after all, he does control the state budget, which is quite important. And sometimes I've heard Westerners and analysts refer to the president's power as being the cheerleader in chief, if you will. He is the public face of Iran. And that does matter, particularly in this 21st century in which image is becoming much more important when it comes to how the rest of the world treats and thinks about you as a nation state. And I think Ahmadinejad's belligerence and some of his comments with regard to the Holocaust and with regard to Israel have not only hurt Iran economically speaking, but have also, well, frankly, to quote Mr. Mousavi during his debate with Ahmadinejad, they've, in a sense, shamed Iran. That there is this sense that somehow Ahmadinejad has become the public face of Iranians, and that's simply not the case. I have to tell you, I give lectures all across the country, and people always ask me, why is it that Iranians don't believe in the Holocaust, which is absurd. I mean, Iranians are very sophisticated people. You learn about the Holocaust, and every freshman, in a college history class learns about the Holocaust. But there is that sense that because of the comments that the head of state makes, that this is somehow reflective of the views and opinions of Iranians on the ground. And so, in that regard, it does matter that he is the public face of Iran. And particularly at a time now that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, this is, in some ways, the stars are in alignment in a way that they haven't been before. Both the United States and Iran are at a place where both of them are ready to reach out. Right. In the 90s, of course, Iran tried to reach out. America wasn't interested. When America tried to reach out, Iran wasn't interested. And now we're in a position where both of them realize that it's time to put the past 30 years behind us and actually move forward. But again, as Human said, regardless, the United States is going to speak to Iran. That we don't have a choice any longer. Actually, but it would be a lot easier if it weren't Ahmadinejad.
Right. Okay. Human Majd, just with less than a minute to go, let me just get your view on, having just come back from Iran, on the fact that the new media, if you like, the social networking, has made itself visible in this election. The fact that Twittering and Facebook appearances, all these seem to have a factor for a lot of people, especially outside Iran in the West. They would be surprised that this would be such a dynamic force during this election.
Yes, well, I mean, I think the modern technology has changed the election in Iran, period. 4 years ago, there was no Facebook in Iran. There was no, far fewer people had internet connections. People weren't texting each other, SMS texting each other the way they are today. And right now in Tehran, it's unbelievable. When I was there, Facebook went down for a couple of days because the Iranian government blocked it for 2 days. And they had to put it back up. They went down because Mousavi's, Mousavi's site, apparently not Mousavi's site, but his page had so many friends that they were afraid of the popularity. So
I have to stop you there and thank you all for taking part. I mean, we'll keep an eye obviously on the elections and hope to have you all back for more discussions. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for being with us. On the next show, join us for a conversation with Nicholas Burns, former U.S. Under-Secretary of State, about the latest developments in Iran, Israel and the Obama administration's evolving relationships in the Middle East. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.